Aloha.
Ed, aloha.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Haven't seen you in about around 40 years, I guess.
Unbelievable. But folks, one of the big innovators in travel, in fishing, from way back in the days. So, I mean, you see all what's going on now, but here's one of the blazers, the real trailblazers, you know. And God, we did trips down in Cabo. Didn't we do a bunch of that too? We had guys, back in those early days.
You just
Beach
reminded me
launches.
on one trip, significant to me also, and you were probably on that trip, I'm not sure, but I took Tanaka on his first trip to Cabo.
And with Katie?
Yeah, with Katie.
That was a perfect deal too,
Yeah.
because Katie never fished with us other than that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
in fact they were a little
Yes.
hesitant about going to Mexico, and so I convinced them to take one of my trips with me. I escorted them down to Cabo San Lucas,
Yeah.
and we had a good time.
We
They
used to
enjoyed
launch
it.
pangas from the beach and run a panga. I mean, that was a whole different. That was exciting. That was a lot. Plus, I remember going to the taco stands and everything. Where I mean, it was before Cabo got expensive, right?
Yes, yes.
It was phenomenal. What a great time. We had some great early blazing times. Catalina trips, all kind, couples trips.
Right.
Right.
I remember, well, even before that, I remember, well, I was a charter master for the Islanders Rod and Gun Club in the beginning. Actually, I
Yeah,
was one of the first of the Islanders. Actually, it was belonged to the airlines. We were the Continental Airlines Rod and Gun Club. And because we had so many people from Hawaii here in LA, they decided, we took a vote and they decided to change it to Islanders Rod and Gun Club. So now it's known as Islanders Rod and Gun Club. And so I basically was in the beginning of that. And
I joined the club just prior. I have a couple of T-shirts, but just prior to COVID. But I think COVID put a hurt on the meetings and things like that too.
I heard that. I
Yeah,
heard that.
yeah. But it's a fun deal. They had it at that complex over Gardena City Hall over there. They had their meetings over
Oh
there.
yeah, in Gardena. Yeah. I actually left the club. That was around '85, mind you, and it was because I started that fishing travel business, and I couldn't devote any time to the club.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Folks, you're talking about a blazer. I mean, I got good friends like Steve Yotomi, but I'm sure everything was, patterned after things that you blazed, and they've taken it, and done different things, but still, yeah, back in those days, it was fun.
We did.
We had a lot of fun stuff.
Quite a bit of stuff in the fishing travel world, yeah.
Yeah.
Traveled around the world. That was my job, Somebody had to do it, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, hey, I did. Here, I'm giving him some sympathy here. Let me play the violin.
So it was pretty good. I got to fish 1 week a month around the world, somewhere in the world. So
Yeah. You and Steve Yotomi now. Steve's
yeah,
taking that on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that was a good time. But I remember the trips that we did started actually, I don't know if you remember, but started way back on the Indian with Bud Levette.
Bud. Yeah.
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 Way back when.
Right.
And then we switched over to George Mio on the New Hustler 2.
Yeah, the commander. He was my code boat.
Yeah. And then I remember on one of your previous shows you mentioned the fact that, you started using scanning sonar. And,
George was the first guy to get
and
that
I
thing.
remember being in the wheelhouse with George with the scanning sonar. And the only other people I remember at the time that had scanning sonar was the salmon fishermen in Alaska. And they used to use it almost too effectively because they would wrap the nets around using the scanning sonar.
Yeah. Well,
And so it was too effective.
yeah. Well, that was the thrill. Is initially it was for commercial use.
Yeah.
Commercial use with the seiners and everything else. But we were as for sport boats. George was the first one to bring it in. Now, he was using a black and white unit initially, which you had to really monitor because the blip didn't stay on like with the colors. So
Right.
it was I think it was '81 when George and I snuck down to San Diego with the first color scanning sonars, West Mars, and boy, that changed the game. And the other part about that too is it helped integrate the fleet, because at one time it was a northern versus southern boat fleet. And with the groups that George and I had, we had some awesome fishermen. So when we went down there and we smoked them, all of a sudden, hey, you want to come into our code group? And we go, we're doing okay. But it did change because it did help break some of the barriers between the northern and southern boats. And when I'm saying northern and southern, it's like the Civil War, but it's between the LA boats and San Diego. So it helped bring a lot of that together in time, So that was a good thing. So yeah. So you see, you were there for a lot of that blazing. A lot of those things.
The guys I was one of the guys that hung around Yo's as well.
Oh
And,
yeah.
We, in fact, you mentioned my T-shirt business. I did that before travel, and I did the T-shirts for Yo and Taka back then.
Yep.
So that was early in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting old,
It was amazing. But in this one year, and Chet did it, we had a T-shirt, and I don't know if only you old guys will know, but these fish ties were real popular in the stores, And so we spoofed it, and we're T-shirt guys anyway. So we took the white T-shirts and he printed a fake collar, on each side, and then put a yellow tail down the middle. And you remember we wrapped it in white paper, like butcher paper from the fish market, and we went down to Day at the Docks down in San Diego, and we sold out of them.
I remember.
I
remember that was only the second day at the docks.
It was
the second one.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It was one of the first days at the Docks. So it goes back, folks. You're seeing history here with Chet. Let me tell you, the second day of the Docks, and then
I thought I remembered that.
It was just before Christmas too, because we had it wrapped in that fish paper, and I think we just had the sizes on the shirts marked, but we sold out of them. I mean, it was unbelievable. They made unbelievable Christmas gifts. It was cute.
I think Rose was it Rose
yes,
that
Rosemary
came with
at
us?
San Pedro Fish.
And
She
she was the one that came up with the idea of wrapping it
wrapping the fish paper because of San Pedro Fish.
Yeah.
And then Dorothy and Matt Mattich came down. Matt's cousin is a Bogdanovich family, which started Starkist. So they're very heavily involved in fishing, folks.
We did a lot back then.
We had fun, and we
was
did a
fun.
lot of laughing. Yeah.
What's
That was
one of
the best part.
craziest parts of the world you've ever fished?
Well, to be honest with you, I went to what I call the last frontier of the world of fishing, and that was on the Hannibal Banks of Panama. And I was invited down there by the Mr. Nabisco of Costa Rica. So we flew into San Jose, and then we went into Golfito, and we took his 100-foot mothership down into
Rough.
Golfito.
You're talking about the guy from Nabisco, the actual owner?
No, he's the
The
Costa Rican Mr. Nabisco
gotcha.
guy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so we went down there and fished. Actually, the interesting thing too was that we flew, not fly, we drove down through a hurricane in this 100-foot ship. And, we were worried if the refrigerators were going to come off the mounts and all those kinds of things, And but when we got down there, I got really lucky, and the reason I call it the last frontier of fishing was so pristine down there that actually what I did was I was fly fishing at the time, and I actually landed an IGFA world record on Dorado down there. I got a 50-pound Dorado on a 20-pound class IGFA record.
Wow.
Down there. So the fishing was so good that, you talk about the days that, you can't catch anything, and the days that, you can't keep them off the hook. Well, this is the days that you couldn't keep them off the hook. And there was a lot of other species out there that we caught. The pargo there was so thick, and what we would do is, in fact, I fished with probably the most famous captain in Costa Rica, and he had a nice Spanish name. His name was Bobby McGinnis.
a local.
That sounds like a relative of my wife's from Costa Rica. Bobby McGinnis.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's still around down there, but he fished out of Capos
Yeah.
on the West Coast. And he flew down, I mean, he drove his six-pack down and met us at the Hannibal Banks down there, and we transferred and fished a couple of days down there. And one was most impressive was we went pargo fishing, red pargo. And I remember the time that you would not see any pargo up against the rocks. And what he would do is he'd throw a teaser up against the rocks and reel it back in real quick, and the pargo would come up, and we called it like raising the Red Sea. The whole sea was red with pargo.
Oh my God!
And
Talk
so,
about trailblazing.
yeah, and then we'd throw a fly to it, and we'd hook, about 15, 20-pound pargo. Couldn't stop them most of the time.
Wow.
But that's some pretty wild, crazy trip.
Oh
What
yeah.
year were you down there fishing Hannibal Bank? Don't tell me that was when I was living in Costa Rica.
Oh, probably was early 90s.
Oh, okay, yeah, little. I was down there in like 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a lot of trips. I did quite a few trips into Costa Rica, and because of the travel business, Costa Rica at that time in the 80s and 90s was super popular. And one of the guys that made it super popular was Nick Curcione. You remember you talked about
Nick.
him?
You know,
my
Nicky.
college professor. I just talked to him the other day again.
You
Oh,
did,
man.
yeah.
Oh, my
we're in
God.
contact all the time.
We used to fish down there and together, and he used to fish at a place on the Caribbean called Casamar, and was a
I've heard of that.
top end lodge.
Yeah.
And Bill, I don't know if it was Bill Barnes, his name was.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, he owned the lodge. He's an
Yeah.
American
Yeah.
down there, and so he fished with Bill a lot. But because of that, I had the opportunity to fish two oceans in one trip.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
That is so cool.
I flew to the Caribbean and we fished 80 to 100-pound tarpon, and then after we got done, flew over to the Pacific and a place called near Flamingo, up there, up to the north.
Yeah.
And I fished with, believe it or not, the lodge was called Pesmaya. It was owned by, you wouldn't believe it, but Mark Tupper. And the last name, any familiar to you?
Tupperware.
Tupperware.
Yeah.
Mark Tupper.
Wow.
Yeah. So
We're hanging around with some big shots.
Well,
Putting Nick aside.
putting Nick aside. Nick,
Just kidding, Nick. Just kidding.
if Nick was watching,
I'll send this to him.
he's pretty famous. You
I think
know.
he was Mr. Orvis, wasn't he? Wasn't he sponsored by Orvis?
Well, he hung around with a lot of different folks.
Yeah,
and he
the-
was-
Lefty Cray was a buddy.
Oh yeah. We knew all,
yeah,
I knew
all the
those
big
guys.
boys, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
all the.
Stu F.
Hey, Nick
probably.
was, talk about an entertainer.
Oh,
If you're anywhere near that guy,
Yeah.
right?
He's the Italian stallion.
That's right, Chet.
He was good. He
Yeah.
was good, and I was down in Mexico with him, Costa Rica. I don't know where else we went, but Nick, he introduced me to the tarpon fishing, and then I went over to the Pacific, and then in the same trip, my first day sail fishing on the fly, I hooked 11 sailfish,
Jeez.
but it took 11 to land the 11th fish, and broke a sage, right at the boat.
Oh, gee.
So I had a fair amount of exciting trips.
Oh,
there.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
You ever have anything that was like life-threatening, or like we're not getting out of this one alive, or anything that was so primitive that it was?
Well, I did actually. I don't know if I should talk about it.
Of
but-
course you should.
It's
Danny's
like-
ratings will go through the roof.
It's a long time ago, and it was another, I call it trip of almost all my trips were trip of a lifetime. Okay, really. And
I just came off the Independence. It was a trip of a lifetime for this week. Next week, I'll have another trip of a
there you
lifetime.
go. Yeah. Well, this one here, I was invited by the Philippine government
Oh,
to go down and evaluate the fishing fleet in the Philippines for sport fishing charters.
oh my God! I was in the Philippines for a month, so I kind of know where this is going.
Pretty crazy, yeah?
Yeah.
So anyway, make a long story short, they flew us down to the Sulu Sea, Port of Princesa, very small village.
I love that place. Yeah, I
Oh,
spent
have
a
you
little
been
ti- Yeah, I have.
Very small town.
Palawan, right?
Palawan, yes, the island, yes. And so we were with the Manila Big Game Fishing Club. And so actually the one guy was, I forgot his name now, Nick, or Vic they called him. He was probably considered the richest Filipino in
Holy
Manila.
smokes.
Wow.
Yeah, he owned several restaurants there, and he belonged to the Manila Big Game Fishing Club. So we started out in these what they call bancas, and bancas are basically a canoe hull with an outrigger on both sides, and we didn't know that till we got there. Okay, so they had about 10 or 12 of these, and so there was some Americans with me down there that I brought with me, and it was the tourism department took care of everything for us. The Manila Big Game Fishing Club took care of all the boats and everything. And you know, a famous guy was with me, and you probably know the name. There's a knot named after him, Tony Pena.
Oh wow.
Oh, yeah.
Tony Pena was with me down in the Philippines. He came with me.
Wow.
Yeah, and so he was a popper guy. He's always a popper guy, fishing poppers on surface. And so he got to fish his poppers. The night we left, they said, we're going to take off tonight and we're going to get up in the morning in the Sulu Sea and we're going to start our fishing club tournament. So it's a long story. I don't want to tell you about the boat, but the boat was not a luxury cruiser. Okay. And,
Go ahead, tell us about it, Jeff.
well, it's more like a canoe. Okay. And so,
That's okay. That's unique.
It's a
you
real,
know?
it's a real story if you want to have time. But
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because Chet, sometimes when I travel somewhere and things are like really bad like that, those are some of my best memories. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Go into some
Absolutely.
detail, right, Danny?
Absolutely.
So I don't know if people know them or they're still fishing around, but I had clients with me at the time, and the two clients were Wallace, Bogan, and Brown. Like Wallace, yeah. Anyway, they were Bogan and Brown. Well, if I understand correctly, they owned a small airport in Carlsbad, so they came along with me. They were always into the adventure trips. Anyway. I don't know if there's another person you might know, Ed Au. He was actually one of the guys that started Angler magazine in California.
Sounds really familiar.
Yeah, Ed Au.
That goes back.
I can't place him, but
Yeah.
So anyway, we got out on these bancas and we come to find out we're heading out in the dark and we've got two Filipinos that don't speak English, okay? And so in the briefing, they said, well, here's the plan. For you guys to eat, there's a sheet of paper that on one side, it's in English, what you want to eat. So you point to that, and they'll look at the number. They'll flip over the sheet, and it's in Tagalog, okay? And they'll cook it for you. And so we're out to sea, and when we get up in the morning, there's no GPS or anything, barely a compass on these bancas. And so we get out there, and I don't even see any boats around. There's probably a dozen of us, but they're scattered all over the Sulu Sea. And so we get out there, and they had to reorganize. And by the time they reorganized, they basically had to call the tournament off for a day to get back to the reef. And so anyway, started the tournament, and again, one of my lucky days again, I caught the only sailfish of the whole tournament, the only big fish of the tournament. So I got about 100-pound sailfish, and the only one in the Manila Big Game Fishing Club tournament. And so it's pretty rough out there. And so, I mean, not the weather or the seas, but living conditions.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
on the way out at night, the bunker is so skinny that they know there's no windows in it. They had wooden shutters that you closed it up like a box, and so there's no ventilation in it, right? And so you had to sleep on these mattresses that are vinyl, right? So you're sweating
Oh
like a
my
dog.
God, yeah.
Okay, and then we find out to go to the bathroom, they had a toilet in the bow, but it didn't go anywhere. It didn't drain anywhere.
Yeah, pretty
So-
cool. It's like having a bucket. Oh,
Basically, it was a toilet, but it should have been just a bucket.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah, because you
geez.
can throw the bucket over.
Boy, let's tell you.
So then it's time to eat. So, you know, we did the drill, and pointed to that, what we wanted. They flipped it over, but their interpretation of what we wanted to eat wasn't the same thing. They didn't know, they looked in the ice chest and they didn't know what it was. Like bacon or eggs or whatever, they didn't know what it was. So then I became the cook.
Oh,
See, we have 4 guys on board. So to prevent the disaster, I became the cook too.
oh man.
So here's how you had to cook. On the bow, there's a charcoal stove. Now we're talking about a wooden bunker.
Oh my God.
Okay,
Asking for trouble.
so we had to light up the wooden charcoal hibachi
Oh
basically,
my God.
and I had to cook the meals for everybody for 2 days on the hibachi basically.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then
Unbelievable.
yeah, we had 2 jerry cans of water, real jerry cans, and that was to shower, to drink, and whatever, you know.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was my real adventure trip that really turned into a disaster. You know, the owner of the what we call the big bunker, that he was the rich guy that had like almost like the Royal Polaris type boat.
Yeah,
Big. He had a cook on, and he had his family on. He had a babysitter for his kids were on board. He had everything. And Tony Pina was lucky. Tony was riding the big boat, so he was happy. And you know, the last day of the trip, the supply boats would come around to us to reload us. And so I saw him coming around, and I told my clients, Bogan and Brown and Ed Au, I said, pack all your bags, because when that supply boat gets here, we're jumping on the supply boat, and we're going to go on the big bunker to go home, because it was like, I don't know how many miles to the Tubataha Reef from Palawan. So it's not close anyway,
Right.
probably 20, 30 miles, you know.
Holy smokes. You talk about trailblazing and a
Oh.
pioneer.
Uh,
Chad, you were way ahead of your time, I'll just tell
So,
you.
well, yeah, and then, you know, I had to write a report to the tourism department about whether they had a viable program. But, you know,
Oh
how
my
that
God.
went, you know.
Well, these are awesome stories.
Oh,
I mean,
God, yeah.
So,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's, you know, I was lucky to have, you know, I traveled all over Alaska, and I fished with the first Eskimo fishing lodge, sport fishing lodge in Alaska. It was out of a place called White Mountain, and it was run by the natives, Eskimos. And so I had the opportunity with several other writers to go there and fish with the Eskimos. And so actually at that time too, I was also doubling as a outdoor writer for California Angler magazine too.
I can remember your articles. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I was there on assignment plus as a travel agent. And so there's only 2 of us that got to do a seal hunt with the Eskimos. And so a guy named Silvio Calavi, who was the editor of Fly Rod and Reel magazine.
Yeah.
Silvio Calavi,
yeah.
and I were the only two picked to seal hunt with a young Eskimo and his girlfriend. And we got a seal, and hate to tell you how they do it back then even. They carry a gun, they carry a 22 gun and a harpoon. And so actually they're really good shots and they're really good with a harpoon. And so from quite a distance, they shot a seal with a 22, and then they got up close to it and they harpooned it. But nothing goes to waste, you know, they're subsistence folks. And so got home and the grandmother was waiting with that knife they call the ulu knife.
Yes.
Okay.
Just that rounded
Right.
handle in the middle, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I have
And
one of those.
she took care of it, and you know, nothing wasted. And at the lodge, it was a 5-star lodge. Had a hot tub in it.
You ate seal meat?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Yeah,
And-
right. How was it?
And it was terrible. If the Eskimos are watching, they'll hate me for it. But it was like chewing leather, and it was they call it muck duck. Muck duck is their specialty, and so no, I didn't like it at all, and I don't think anybody else really liked it. You know, and
Yeah.
so that was my Alaska adventure. So you know, I've had quite a few in the world, but
Oh
That-
my!
that was
What a
pretty
blazer
interesting,
too, though, Chet. Especially back in those days, you're really blazing. I mean, now, you know, you look at it, we're spoiled now. You know.
yeah, we are. But that's the travel business. It was back then. You know, that was back before faxes even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You didn't happen to know a guy named Bruce Kuhn who had a company called Baja Adventures?
I
know him,
I know
or-
him. He was my competitor in the business.
Really?
Bruce Kuhn did mainly Baja.
Yes.
He did thousands of people to Baja.
Yes.
Okay. Was that your friend? Or
Yeah. No, don't worry though. Just say whatever you gotta say.
Bruce Kuhn, probably still alive, we're still the same age, but Bruce Kuhn actually took all the hoteliers in Baja for a long ride, stole all their money, and he went out of business.
Oh jeez.
That's true. I mean, I know he went out of business.
He went out of business because he didn't pay the hotels. And you know, I always wondered at the time when I was in business, how come he could put these Baja trips together so cheap? Because I couldn't compete with him. And there was a lot of folks in the business, Baja Fishing Adventures in Long Beach, Gordon Prentice, I think it was.
Remember that name.
Okay, and he was big in Baja, and he was hard to beat, but Bruce Kuhn beat everybody. But that's because he kept the money.
Well, I'm glad we went with you because we never had anything repossessed. We always had a great time. Yeah.
There was 3 or
Yep.
4 people that were not great actors in the
Yeah.
business of travel.
Yeah.
See, and there was another guy, I forget his name, but I remember his company name was called Tracks to Costa Rica. Okay, and he took everybody for a ride. He stole a lot of money, never paid the operators, and I had travel agents calling me saying, "What can I do? Can you do anything for me? Because he's gone, and he took our money."
Oh my God.
So there was a lot of bad operators. I hate to speak names, but
No, but that's
those are
part
the real
of it. Yeah,
names
that's
of the guys. And so those are 2 of the real bad actors that I knew of. And if you talk to any of the major hotels in Cabo or in the whole area there, they would know him. They would know him.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And
Well,
so-
thank God we had Chet back in those days. I mean, we always had great
Oh, I-
trips.
I
yeah.
stood behind my name.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
all about your name,
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
right? And so,
No matter what you do, it's
Yeah.
about your name.
Yeah.
yeah.
Chuck, any crazy experiences in Mexico or your favorite place to fish in Mexico? I love going to Mexico.
Well, I got a lot of stories about Mexico, okay, but I'll tell you maybe two of them real quick.
Yeah.
One of them is I was an adventurer, okay, so one day I loaded up my wife and my two kids, and I drove from Torrance to Cabo San Lucas in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so that was an adventure.
I love that drive.
Cheapest hotel I ever stayed at was in between Ensenada and probably Bay of LA, $2 a night.
Boy, that's worth it. Just
$2 a
for the
night.
bragging rights.
For the adventure.
Just for the bragging.
you know?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And
How
so
was it? Was it okay?
It
I
was,
mean,
yeah, it
it's
was.
not
It
going to be a
was.
5-star, but
It was.
had a bed, right?
It had a bed.
Yeah.
It was okay. It was okay.
Yeah.
My wife and kids weren't too happy with it. You know. But yeah, that was one trip. The other trip I thought was very rewarding to me in that we're talking about the Islanders Rod and Gun Club
Yeah.
now. I, after some really long research, I caravanned about 30 of the members and wives and kids of the Islanders Rod and Gun Club down to, I forget the name of the town now, just below Ensenada.
San Quintin?
San Quintin. I'm trying to think of the name. Back then, where almost all the roads were dirt. Back
Yeah.
there, right. And the only big hotel there was the La Pinta Hotel.
Oh, I remember La Pinta.
It's probably still there.
Yeah.
Okay, but prior to that, in my research, what I did was I drove around and fished with a guy that had a panga out of the landing. It was in Mission Viejo, I think it was, and it was basically down an old dirt road. There was only one or two pangas there, and he took us fishing. And the only thing he had, okay, fish San Martin, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's foggy down there, right? You've probably
jeez.
been down there,
Oh,
and know,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now I went out there in a panga from San Martin.
Oh, my
I mean,
God.
from San Quintin.
Yeah.
And we only had a compass. He had a whiskey compass, what we used to call a whiskey compass, on the bow. No GPS, no nothing. And through the fog, through the bay, out to San Martin. And but I lived, and so I caravanned the whole club, about probably 5 or 6 vehicles, all the way down from Torrance, all the way down to San Quintin, and most people who have never been to Mexico or Baja, they're very hesitant about going. They're very scared to go, and so after that trip, they went every year.
Yeah, so
Every
you
year.
you blazed it, Chet. You
So
you blazed
they
it.
love
yeah.
San Quintin. And the unique thing about San Quintin too was when we were down there at the landing there, well, if we come in from fishing, I look in the water next to the landing and I see a whole bunch of crabs, you know? And so I go, wow. So the next trip we come down, I said, we're going to bring the crab nets. And sure enough, we had buckets of crab, white crab, and then we had fish. And then in front of the San Quintin, the beach, is pismo clams.
Oh my God, you eat like kings.
So we
Oh,
had all kinds of stuff to
Good
eat
stuff.
and fish and enjoy for 2 or 3 days down in San Quintin. So that was rewarding because, you know, people that were afraid to go to another country and, you know, people and whatnot, you know, I made a believer out of them that it's okay to do things like that, you know. Same thing with Taka. He was kind of afraid to go. And so, you
Well,
know,
I think I remember that trip. I mean,
You remember
was that was when we found that, you know, we were driving to the hotel and we saw a taco stand where all the locals were, you know, and we said, we want to go back there. This is kind of a funny story. So we go to the taco stand. I think there might have been 15. We had a big crowd. We had
it
quite a
was
few.
because I made it into a tournament, fishing tournament.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So we had a big crowd. We get there and we all sit down and they're all the little small burritos, small tacos, right? So all of us go, oh my God, they're kind of small. So, I better order 4, 2 burritos, 2 tacos, and then we'll start with that and sodas, whatever. So we're all done, and we want to pay the bill. So we go, well, how many did you have? Well, I had 4 burritos and 2 tacos. I had this, and like I said, they're small. And so we're all raising our hands and saying, no, I had 2 and 4. Well, while we're doing this, the gal's doubling our order. So now, instead of 4, we've eaten 8 burritos and 4 tacos or whatever, with the soda. And we go, oh my God, all this food started coming out. Well, we ended up killing it.
Yeah.
So we're looking for, I go, nobody raised their hands. How many did you have? Okay, you had 8, you had this. And she gives us the bill, and it was so cheap. We go, no, can't be it. And she kept insisting, yeah, that's it. I said, no, it can't be that. And we gave her more than double the amount. I said, let's throw that in. And I mean, that alone, Chet, was worth talking about and very memorable. I mean, like I said, to me, it's like yesterday.
Oh.
And we went back the next day. But of course, you go back where all the local sheriffs and police, they all eat, and all the locals. I don't want to go to a hotel with all the Americans. You want to eat what the locals eat. But,
Right.
through your adventures, oh my God, we had phenomenal. Those trips are always just fun.
Appreciate that.
That's great,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I thought it was all
absolutely.
about. It like to be.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
Yeah, well, one of the true blazers down there.
That was the thing with my kids and I. Parents would be, no, I don't want my son or daughter going with you to Mexico. They're gonna get their head cut off. And then we finally talk them into it, and the kid would be sitting in a restaurant going, this is exactly the opposite of what I was told it was gonna be like. It's peaceful, people are nice.
Beautiful. Yes.
It's a beautiful place. And I know what you're talking about. When you turn somebody like that, you feel a sense of accomplishment, or I don't know what,
That's part of it, I think.
Yeah,
too,
right?
Yeah.
No,
One other one I had sense of accomplishment, felt really good about it was I took a group of Texas Rangers into the Amazons. Okay. And I went into Manaus. I took them into Manaus. And they went from Texas. I was living in Reno at the time. And I escorted them from Miami into Manaus. And then aircraft picked us up and flew us into the jungle. And then we boarded a houseboat. And I hate to say, but one of the Texans, one of them, he wasn't part of the Texas Rangers, but he was another individual from Texas. But I hate to say, he was more prejudiced against Japanese because he was a POW in World War II.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But after I actually fished with him and came out of the trip with him,
You changed them.
he changed him to, he wasn't, what is it, the word, against
Yeah, bias.
Orientals or
Yeah,
Japanese,
yeah.
biased
Yeah.
about it. And
Yeah.
he turned around completely, and
Beautiful.
that's
Beautiful.
that's probably the most rewarding one I had.
It has to be.
And
Yeah.
his son called me several months after the trip, and from Texas, and he said, my dad had such a good time with you, and for his birthday, you took a picture of him with his like 10 or 12 pound peacock bass, and he says, can I have it? So I blew up a big picture, I don't know, 8 by 10 or 11 by 40 or something, of him with his big peacock bass, and I sent it to him, and they were just ecstatic about that. So it's not only about the fishing, right?
Right.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
it's,
yeah.
Every time I go to Alaska, I tell people, just don't look into the water at the fish. Look up and see the white-capped, snow-capped mountains. Look at the land. Look at everything, not just the fishing part of it. So that's, to me, the whole experience is not just the fishing part.
Yeah. No, it's the experience with especially in Brazil, and when you're in the Amazon and through that, the primitive stuff. I used to feel bad, and I would always bring my kids had clothes that still had tags on it, so I bring down a lot of stuff for the kids in the villages when you land in the small fields to give away. But Steve would tell me, he says, you know, and something that we don't recognize as Americans is you got to be careful because if we gave these people a common cold, you might kill off a whole village. And you don't recognize that, right? Because they don't have the immunity systems. And you know, after, I mean, we didn't do that, but I mean, when he told me that after, I'm going, oh my God, you got to be kidding. So we had to kind of quit doing that extra stuff for the, and I just got this phobia now that you can do that. And you think about that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they don't have the immunity system. So it's something to, you know, it was brought upon me that, you know, here you want to do good, but you know, you don't want to wipe out a village with a common cold, you know, by us bringing down a common cold. So yeah, in travel, there's so many life lessons that we've learned over the years. It's wonderful. I wouldn't trade it for anything, you know. But yeah, like you said, I mean, you know,
I
there's a
had
lot to be
one,
learned.
what I call it a geographic moment. Was I was in the Amazons and we were fishing, and of course that's you're not really in the Amazons, right? You're in what they call the Rio Negro system,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Blackwater system.
Blackwater, before it hits the
Black River,
Bronco. Yeah.
And
yeah.
but we came upon a family in the middle of nowhere, and it was a mother and a daughter, and one was washing clothes, and there was a million butterflies around, you know, and so that was unbelievable. But what they were doing was they would collect tropical fish to bring back to the U.S. in the Amazons, and so that was their life, to collect tropical fish. So, you know, National Geographic moments.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
there.
and you're right. We travel from the Blackwater and you go into a little stream, into those clear water streams, like neon tetras. We look and we go, God, they're beautiful. Hey, those are all aquarium stuff. You know, it's truly an amazing. Those trips are absolutely amazing. You know.
That's that's where we get all those fishes in the aquariums in the pet
Yes,
store.
absolutely.
A lot
Yeah.
of it, I guess.
And I mean, some of the big ones we would catch and use them for bait too. Then we get the bigger ones. We go, hey, that looks like I want to throw that on a peacock, you know. But yeah, we leave it to us Californians, you know.
Yeah.
But
So,
yeah, no.
you know, being a bass
Unbelievable.
fisherman too, the peacocks are like the king,
Oh,
right? You
oh
know,
my God,
so-
the blow-ups,
Yeah.
nothing like it. Steve,
Best place to fish
Yeah.
peacock bass? Where is
oh,
it?
it's there.
Where Danny
I
went,
said,
I think
absolutely
where
there.
I went.
I got
that was
hooked
probably-
5 years in a row. I went down there with Steve. He told me, but you know, I mean, here you're a blazer. You know, you're one of the early blazers for sure. I'm not even close. You know.
It seems like that's where the biggest ones are, is
Yeah.
in the Amazons, in the lower Amazons actually,
Yeah.
because the Amazons actually, they say, start in Peru. And in Peru, the peacocks are much smaller for some reason. But as you get way down in the system, into Brazil,
Yeah.
the peacocks are huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. No, it's a blast. It's an absolute.
yeah. I guess they got a lot of operators now in the Amazons. They're still doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. Steve, you told me, just got down there today.
Oh, back again?
He was in Indonesia 2 days ago. Had a quick stop at Auntie Miley's, get his Hawaiian food,
Oh.
and then hopped on a plane. He's down in Manaus this morning. I think it was. So yeah.
Oh, you spoke
Yeah, he's
about
on the
Auntie
road.
Miley's, right?
Yes.
Okay, my my best friend, who is Islanders Fishing Club, right? His son owns it, or did own it, and sold it to Auntie Miley.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he owned it.
Miley
He
and
started
Uncle
it.
Bruce had a deal.
and
Yeah, yeah.
and
Oh
then
my
sold
God.
it.
What's Auntie Miley's?
Oh, I'm gonna have to take you over there. You're a
Yeah.
carnivore. You'll
Yeah.
love it.
Oh.
Oh, it's the best Hawaiian food in Southern Cal.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
And they got
I don't know if you eat lau lau, but I'll take you on a Friday if you eat lau lau. It's a special, you know.
It's kind of like
yeah.
going to Gardena Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Or even more, yeah,
I'm in.
down home.
Let's go
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, we'll have to do that for
Another
sure.
podcast.
Yeah, we'll film it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
Hawaiian food is real different if you're not familiar with
Yeah,
it.
poke. You know, I mean, everything's the real deal. You know.
So yeah, there's a lot of restaurants now that serve Hawaiian food in LA. Yeah, in fact, one of my other friends in the fishing club, the Islander Club, his son owns a couple of Hawaiian food restaurants here in LA, Torrance, and I forget where else it was, but Ash Kawasaki.
Oh, my God.
Kawasaki's, they have a couple of
You
restaurants.
know what's funny, Chet? I don't think I ever told you this, but my dad's good friend in the Air Force, he was from Hawaii. And his name was John Young, so we called him Uncle John, right? And anyway, you know, when I was, the first time they came to the mainland, this is after, you know, they both served over in Korea. And before they were stationed, before they were sent to Korea, they were down south. You know, so on the winter break, our family was in Chicago, and my dad took Uncle John up to the, with the family up to Chicago, so he wouldn't be by himself, you know. So basically, you know, we became real close. So at, I think it was 5, he gave me my first conventional, they had a trip back to LA, brought me my first conventional reel, which of course I didn't know how to use. I was using a Mitchell 300 back in those days.
Mitchell Garcia.
And
yeah.
as I got older, you know, we had a lot of correspondence. But I was a Boy Scout when I was 16. We made a trip over to Waikiki, to Honolulu. He lived in Aiea, you know. And so I can remember taking off away from the troop to go spend the day to go fish with Uncle John. Now, up until that time, he had hooked like 15 Marlin and lost them. You know, he's using a big 16-0 pan, the whole deal. He had a trailerable boat that we went up to Makaha and dumped it in up there. And we're trolling him, sleep halfway, and we hook a Marlin. We landed his first Marlin, and I gotta tell you, there's nothing like anything in Hawaii, where all the neighbors, we put out these big tables in the middle of the street. They put the Marlin out there, chopping it up. All the neighbors are getting a chunk of Marlin, but all the neighbors are bringing pupus and stuff.
Yeah.
And we have a big party out in the street. I mean, it was something I'll never forget in my life, you know. But I mean, it's so cool. I mean, that was my.
That's the thing about people in Hawaii. They have to have or find an excuse to have a party.
Yeah.
Right?
Catch
There's
your
always
first
going to be an
Marlin?
excuse to have a party.
Well, that's
Unbelievable.
pretty worldwide, isn't it?
Is it?
I think so. All my Mexican friends in Mexico are always looking for an excuse.
There you go.
Everybody around here is always looking for an excuse.
Yeah.
You know, I gotta say something. You look at, I think that travel, the kind of travel you guys are talking about, is the best education a kid
it
could
is.
ever get.
Absolutely.
Way better than anything I experienced in the university. I went to Loyola, good university, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
I learned a lot more living in Costa Rica, living in Mexico, 3 years in China, traveling around the world. You learn so much, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, I have a Marlin story, real quick one to tell you.
Don't make it
Actually,
quick.
I have two, but
Good. We want to hear them both.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
the first one is before I had my travel business. I had a guy contact me from New Zealand. Okay, so his name was Rick Pollock, and I don't know if you ever heard the name before.
Rick Pollock, yes.
Okay, he was a San Diego
Skipper.
and became expatriate of New Zealand. So he ran a boat they call it Whakatane in New Zealand. We call it Wakatani.
Yeah,
But he invited me, he gave a presentation to our club. And so he invited me down to fish with him in Whakatane. And so I went down there with one of our club members. And again, one of those trips that you couldn't do anything wrong. Okay. So we're heading out to this place called White Island. And you heard White Island on the news where the volcano blew up and killed a whole bunch of tourists there, right?
Yeah.
A few years ago.
Yeah.
Well, that's the island we went to. We headed for that island. And it was only smoking back then. But on the way, halfway out to the island, and we didn't have our gear put together, right? So we had about 3, they call them English mackerels, the big ones, big mackerels live in the tanks. And so he says, you guys put your gear together because there's a bunch of birds in front of us. And so I had my gear together first. So we pinned on looked like about 3-4 pound mackerel on my yos. long range rod, 5-footers, the ones that nobody likes anymore.
655 heavy or something like that? or
XH or
XH?
something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, so he said, get on the bow.
Yeah.
I got on the bow, and he said, we looked up, and there's a meatball of mackerel. I mean, a huge meatball. Well, we look closer, there's 3 marlin, striped marlin circling the meatball. So about time we got close enough, and I pitched the mackerel in the middle. Well, the marlin came in for the kill, and the mackerel all split, and my bait was there, and one of them ate it. Okay, and that's great fishing. But the interesting thing is, it took me about an hour. It's probably, I call them smart fish. One of the smartest fish that I fished for, because on the bow, we finally got the marlin in close, but we couldn't get him up. And what he did was he faced the boat, and so every time Rick would back the boat and turn it, try to get away from the marlin so we could fight it, he would stay between my legs and follow the boat. So we couldn't get him tired, and so finally we got him up. He died, actually. It took so long. And so we got the fish up, and actually on the same trip, we went out to another reef, and I got my first big yellowtail.
And they're big.
They're big. It went 50.
Those are big, yeah.
50-pound yellowtail. I guess, of course, they call them southern yellowtail, but
Right.
but they look the same. But yeah, so I got all kinds of really good fishing. But the interesting thing about the marlin is, when we were coming in back into the port, it's a small kind of village-like place, and he called in and said, he told the town that we're coming in with a big marlin. And the marlin was big because the average striped marlin, it was a striped marlin, the average striped marlin is about 100 to 110 pounds. You catch them in Cabo all day long,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, this was twice the size. This one was 220.
Well, that's big. It's a big stripe.
220, yeah. And so we come in, the whole town was there meeting us. The whole town, kids, everybody. And so Rick told me, he said, you know what? There's a wedding in town, and the wedding party asked me if they could have the fish for their wedding. So I said, sure, what am I going to do with a 220-pound marlin anyway? And we had to kill this one. But I donated 220-pound marlin to a wedding party in Whakatane, New Zealand. So that was another rewarding.
Beautiful.
Oh my God,
Sure.
unbelievable! Yeah, so that was, and it didn't like Jack Montgomery. So a few of the San Diego skippers. Jack went over there. I don't know whether he got kicked out because Jack is Jack, but I mean, Jack was a rebel. Great fisherman though. I got to say, great fisherman. When he went to New Zealand there, he went with my partner, with Bashi. And and he blazed, but I think he basically got kicked out of there and ended up in Alaska after that, But we stayed with Jack. Jack actually ran the fortune we took the fortune up to Alaska. We were gonna commercial fish with it and everything else. But Jack's a great fisherman. But yeah,
I
I think
didn't
he
see
got
him
booted
there.
out of. That's Jack, but I think he got booted out of New Zealand.
Well, Rick was really famous in New Zealand, still is.
No,
he's
great.
still there.
He's still there.
And
I remember when he was here.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what social media does?
Oh,
I looked him up finally on social media. So I haven't seen him in over 40 years, right? The last time I fished with him in New Zealand. Well, I found out that his son lives in Honolulu.
oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, and
Wow.
I remember his son because it was an unusual name. He named him Kid. So his name is Kid Pollock. And so, I finally got through his son, got to Rick, and he came to Honolulu coincidentally about that time, and which was only a year ago. And so I took him out to lunch for one of our famous Hawaiian plate lunches. He couldn't believe it. He
Which
says,
one?
well, there's a place called St. Louis Drive-In in Hawaii.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I love that place. And
Yeah.
the thing that I eat there is called the seafood platter, okay, deluxe seafood platter. And for $12, you would get a filet piece of mahi-mahi, 2 shrimp tempuras, and 6 pieces of sashimi for $12. And that's just a everyday
Nothing
plate
like
lunch. That they
nothing
serve.
like plate lunches.
So I
in
got him
Hao.
that,
Yeah.
and he couldn't believe it, and he ate it all up, and he, you know, his son goes there now, and you know,
Oh, that's so cool.
when I grew up there,
yeah.
I ate there since it opened in 1962. So I ate there since 1965. So every time I eat there a fair amount. But anyway, yeah. So Rick was a real famous guy, and
Oh, that's awesome. That's so awesome.
enjoyed-
Yeah, my grandparents on my mom's side were both born in Hilo, because when they came over in 1892, they were born in Hilo. So you know they're the early 1900s, but they're the ones I fished with every weekend from the time I was, 4 years old. So yeah. So it always had that Hawaiian everything. We had we were musubis, we had this, we had that, you name it.
Chet, you said you had another Marlin story,
you still want to hear another?
Absolutely.
Yes.
This is like talking to
Heck
Zane
yeah!
Gray or something.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
This is a Zane
He's
Grey
a blazer.
story.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm just
You're almost like a Zane Grey story.
clairvoyant tonight.
Okay, so this was maybe even before I was involved with the fishing club. I had some friends in Kona, okay, and so I decided to go fishing in Kona, okay, and so the boat that they had, it was called the Hawaiian in Kona. Now, the interesting thing about that boat is because most of the boats are owned and operated by what we call haole people. Haole is just a term for Caucasian or white folks.
Right.
And so in Kona, almost all the boats are operated by haole.
Yeah.
There's the only Hawaiian boat, Hawaiian owned and operated family operation by a captain named Arthur Spinney. Okay, and he's famous in himself as a Hawaiian captain. Okay, but I didn't fish with him, and I fished with his sons. His sons were all captains. He had 3 sons, all captains. Okay, so we went out on a charter with him, and actually there was somebody from San Diego that chartered the boat actually, and so we fished all day with nothing, and about 3 o'clock. We hooked some what we call aku, which is skipjack, right? So aku, it was about a 5-pound aku. So we bridle hooked the aku live, and so it was about 3 o'clock or 3:30, I remember, in the afternoon. We hooked up. Okay, so we hooked the fish, and it was huge. Okay, huge, and so we fought them, and took everybody in the boat had their chance. To make a long story short, it was in dark by the time we got the fish in. Okay, from 3 o'clock to about 3 o'clock in the morning we got in. We fought the fish for 11 hours.
Holy smoke.
11 hours with about 4 or 5 guys. And the reason was, and this is what the captains told me, was that there's a pressure barrier in the water, and you probably already know that they told me that at 30 feet there's a pressure barrier, that anything below 30 feet will hold you or fish down, especially if it's dead. So what happened was this marlin died, and it was below 30 feet. So we had to plane this
Plane
fish
it.
out
Forward, back.
for about 8 or 10 hours.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Holy
We
smokes.
planed the fish. It was dark. We had to call home. My wife's waiting in the hotel with my kids, and wondering we lost at sea or whatever. And finally, the family called my wife and said, "We're okay. We're fighting a fish." And so we get it onto the dock, onto the scale. Okay, it was a 870 black marlin. So it was huge, yeah. And the guy that actually did the charter, I heard he owned some kind of small zoo in San Diego or something. He had it mounted,
Holy smokes.
870-pound
So there's
Marlin.
one mounted somewhere down there, probably in San Diego.
Probably.
Huh?
You
Yeah.
know.
Unreal.
So it's another fish
Unreal.
story.
That's a
That's
great one,
unbelievable.
right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's all true stories.
Yeah. Yeah. See, in our family, my great grandparents, when they left Japan in 1892, they stopped them. So my grandparents that I fished with every weekend, both of them were born in Hilo. And my great grandfather had the fishing fleet there in Hilo, you know, and he was a Shimamoto. And so he used to work with a guy named P.C. Beamer, who owned a lot of this stuff. And I don't know if that's part of the Beamer family, you know, the singers and stuff, but you know,
Yeah.
it was really funny. And they got hit by, it was a big hurricane in the early 1900s, and that's when they came to the mainland. That's what made them come over to the mainland. But yeah, amazing all
Yeah.
the stories and history. It goes back.
Do you still travel around the world?
I still do travel because my main life actually, I was an airline employee. I was an aircraft maintenance technician, and so a lot of what I did was work flying with the airlines. So I flew around a lot, even though I had the travel business too. Before the travel business, and so even after my travel business, I went back with the airlines and I fly. And so actually my next trip is going to Aitutaki in the Cook Islands.
Oh, I've been to the Cook Islands. I love
Have
the
you?
Cook Islands. Yeah.
Yeah. So soon, probably in January, I'm going to go down to the Cook. And on my bucket list is also Cuba.
I haven't done that, and that's on my bucket list.
And
Let's
that's
go, Danny.
I'm in.
it's good, but you got to know how to travel in Cuba. I've been to Cuba 2 times now, not for fishing. I went once for scuba diving because part of my tour business was also scuba diving trips too. So, and I'm a certified open water diver. So, I went for diving one time in Cuba, and then actually recently I went to Havana because I was scouting for a trip into Cuba for tarpon permit and bonefish.
Grand
So,
Slam.
The Grand Slam is what I'm looking for before
There
I
you go.
go. And it's one of my last bucket
There you go.
lists,
There you go.
And so, you have to know how to move around Cuba, okay? Because number one, we don't have a relationship government to government with Cuba, so they don't accept American dollars, okay? They don't accept American credit cards, so you carry euros or Canadian dollars with you. That's the way you have to travel. Now, it's being more and more accepted, I heard, though, that they will accept the US dollar, but you don't get as much for your money with a US dollar. But if you really get stuck and you had to use your credit card, you can't use your credit card because they just won't accept cards because the banks don't recognize an American credit card. You have to have a European or a Canadian credit card down there.
Yeah.
So you have to know how to travel down there. There's a lot of travel agencies now, not a lot, but there's some travel agencies that specialize in going into Cuba to fish. And so they have things figured out, and I kind of know what they're doing. But the interesting thing is the area that I want to fish is way far away from Havana, which is the better fishing. And another thing you have to remember too, when you travel in Cuba, you cannot stay in any hotel. 90% of the hotels in Cuba are government owned. And the State Department has a list of hotels that are owned by the Cuban government, and you're not allowed to stay there
As an American citizen?
as an American citizen. And
Are you allowed to go to Cuba?
you are allowed to go to Cuba, but it has to be one of 10 reasons. They have a list. And when you go into Cuba, you have to fill out the list. What is your reason, your legitimate reason to go into Cuba? And there's only one that 95% of Americans will qualify for. And tell you. Somebody from the State Department might be watching me, but it's legal. You go, it's called going in support of the Cuban people. Okay. So an example is you cannot stay in those fancy resorts because they're all owned by the government. Okay. Airbnbs are good because they're not owned by the US government. They're private local businesses. So you qualify as not breaking the law, not staying in a government hotel. So you can use Airbnbs or find the hotels that you can go and stay at. Yeah. So you're supporting the government, or I'm sorry, you're supporting the statement that you're supporting the local people by fishing with the local guides, okay, and staying in local hotels and Airbnbs. You can even rent a room there. I've been in Havana and just rent the rooms. Very cheap, $40 a night, you know, to stay with them. Very good hosts, and they have lots of great tours right in Havana. And so, and a lot of in the tourist industry, a lot of people speak English and whatnot. But yeah, you got to pick the right hotel. You have to have the right money. You have to fish with the right people. And transportation is another interesting thing there.
The old cars, they still have those?
Cars, yeah. I got another story about that, but I won't go into that one.
Why not?
I'll tell you about moving around in Cuba. See, in my research, trying to find out how to travel, I did some internet research, and I didn't get anywhere, and that's why I went into Havana to find out how I'm going to move around and whatnot. So I couldn't get any answers on the airlines that was going into this one area, and so I knew that there was an airline that went in there, but it didn't go in from Havana. So I found out when I flew into Havana that I went directly to Cubana Airlines, their office, and talked to them. And so they told me that we don't fly into this town that you want to go into. And so I said, well, how do I get in there? They said, well, you take the bus. Now it's at least an 8 to 10 hour bus ride from Havana into this remote location. Okay. If you want to fly into that area, you have to fly either from Europe or Toronto, Canada.
Jeez.
So, you know, if you wanted to alleviate the bus ride, what you have to do is you have to fly from, let's say here, LAX to Toronto, get on a plane from Toronto into this area here.
And then back down. Holy smokes.
Yeah, and otherwise you take the 8-hour bus ride. So, you know, you got to find out all the logistics about moving into Cuba
Well,
and fishing
that's
into
why they
Cuba.
travel with people. That's why we've always traveled with people like you, because he's got it down.
Well, you
And
know,
that's huge. Those little things are huge, though. You know.
I like to help people. And,
Oh yeah.
you know, I try and find the best facts and the best ways to travel somewhere, you know. And believe it or not, interesting thing is American Airlines, even though we don't have a relationship with Cuba, has 6 flights a day from Miami to Havana.
Really?
Round trip, 6 flights a day. And they're never full. Never full. And
That's got to be, is it cheap?
I don't
It's
know.
only 90 miles, right? Or
Oh, no, you know what? It's a Catalina ride. I call it the 26 miles across the sea.
Wow.
26 miles.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's very close. 20-minute ride, if that.
Yeah.
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 So you can fly from here to Miami and get on a 20-minute ride and you'll be in Havana, Cuba.
Wow.
Yeah, but you can't get into the location that I'm talking about. I can't remember the name of it now. But the only way you can get in there is from either Europe or Canadians. So you see a ton of Canadians down there and a ton of Europeans.
Wow.
What's wrong with a 10-hour bus? I did Mexico City to Tijuana 2 times. That was a 72-hour bus ride. I'm good with an 8-hour bus ride, 10-hour bus.
Well, yeah, if
I
you,
can imagine what the bus looks like. I already can see. I know what's going on.
if you don't mind riding with the roosters. then,
Right,
you know.
exactly. You're gonna get hit in the head. You know, watermelon's gonna roll off and hit you in the head or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
So yeah,
That's great.
so if anybody needed to know how to go into Cuba, I can tell you how to get into Cuba.
That's awesome.
You are the man, Chet.
One
I'm
funny
telling
thing
you.
about Cuba is they used to have 2 types of monetary denominations, right? One was the local dollar, one they called a tourist dollar. Okay, so the tourist dollar was the only ones the tourists can use, and the local dollar you had to be a local to use it. Okay, so we get in there and you buy your tourist dollar from using Canadian money. So I had to convert all my money. You have to know exactly how much money you're going to use there. So I bought Canadian and euros. And then when I get there, then you go to the money exchange. They'll exchange your money into tourist dollars. So I haven't been there in a year. So actually, I went there the month before COVID started. I think it was April 2 years ago. I went into Havana. And so I haven't been there for 2 years. So within the 2 years, they did away with the tourist dollar. So the money I had saved at tourist dollars, it was like Mexican money when it was the old Mexican money.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
kept it, it's worth
Not worth
nothing.
anything. Yeah.
It's
Oh,
the
my
same
God.
thing in Cuba now.
Oh no.
Oh, gee.
So I lost a couple $100, but luckily I didn't have more than that.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
know, but that's the nuances and things you got to know about sometimes about doing that kind of thing. But Cuba is very exotic, and they really enjoy Americans there. They really like
Well,
Americans.
that's a true.
I'm in, man. I want to go.
I entertain a thought, with all the bass fishing down here, and California, the state of California, killed the trophy bass fishing. Total mismanagement. It's horrible. But Cuba, at one point, it was on my radar because it was approaching some of those record numbers, and I was kind of logging it the whole time. That was almost a doable thing at the time. I don't know what the situation is now, but there was a time where it was starting to peak, and they were getting that 19, that upper range.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. I
Yeah.
never hear about
Yeah,
the
they had
bass
lakes
there.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, everybody kind of goes there mainly for tarpon, permit, and bonefish.
Yeah.
There are some outside sport boats, but I don't hear too much about that activity. And most of the guys that do that are fly fishermen, and there are some spin fishermen that do it, but they're mostly fly fishermen. So that's why I do both. I go conventional fishing and to fly fish, and in the travel business, I tell people, they don't know this, but being in the travel business, I have to identify a fisherman in about 5 to 10 minutes. So when I talk to a fisherman and ask him questions in about 5 to 10 minutes, I can tell exactly what he wants and kind of know exactly where to put a fisherman, So you talk
That's
about
all the experience, Chet. But and that's why you should listen to guys like that. When Pete Demers and I went down to Guyana, Steve told me bring a fly rod. I go, get out of here, fly. 200-pound Arapaima. I says, get out. Are you crazy? And I'm loading it up with Spectra, and I'm having special equipment, that I'm taking down there to throw the lures with, right? You get down there, and Pete and I are very competitive, so we're making a lot of casts. Well, the ear bone on the Arapaima, right? They're very sensitive. So you can make about 1 or 2 casts a piece, and they sink out. And then they're down there for 40 minutes because they're air breathers, right? And at that point, I'm going, what an idiot. Now I get it. Because if you threw a fly, I could have made, I don't know how many strips. Because the landing is so soft, it's not going to spook them with these big lures. Splash, well, three, 4 splashes, and they, bubble trail down. And you're not going to see them for 40 minutes. But, with a fly, And I started kicking myself. I said, why didn't I listen and bring a, you know, a 12, 13 weight, you know? And they're not going anywhere because it's 4 to 6 feet of water. They get into the weeds. The guides will jump off, get in between the weeds, so they go out to the middle of the lake. They're all big, closed off, you know, ponds basically. And when the water gets high, they get trapped in there, right? So yeah, the moral of the story is, yeah, you have to listen to the guides. You know, when he first told me bring a fly rod, I go, yeah, are you crazy? 250-pound fish on a fly rod. But yeah,
Can you catch that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
So anyway,
You're
yeah,
welcome.
no, but no, absolutely. You know, I get that, but people should understand that when they're traveling, they need to listen to you. I'm just telling you that right now. You heard it from me, folks. He tells you something, you listen.
Well, I'm not
Yeah.
in the business anymore, but
Yeah,
you know,
just
I-
your
you know,
experience alone. I mean, what you're conveying right now is priceless, Chet. You know,
thanks.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I call it fishing profiling. You know, I have to profile somebody quick. You know, because if a guy say he wants to go to Cabo, I have to say, what do you want to catch? How do you want to catch it?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
does he want to catch it on the fly? Does he want to catch it spinning gear? Does he want to catch it on casting gear or whatever
Does he
it
just
is?
want to catch it?
Yeah,
right?
you know,
What his
so-
level of expertise is.
Yeah, basically, yeah, you know, a lot of folks that go fishing, they don't know about the fishery. They just wanna do it and try it, and it might be a bucket list thing, but you know they want to give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it kind of actually relates to me why I'm coming back and forth in LA so much and fishing is because I think I told you about the bluefin tuna. I had never caught a bluefin tuna ever in my life. Okay, so now it's 75 years.
Oh, geez.
Okay, so about 8 years ago when the bluefin started, again, my good friend in the Islander Club,
Yeah.
Elliot, he's kept telling me, you know, the bluefin are here. We have to do it, you know. And I didn't really listen, and I was living more in Honolulu at the time, and so finally, about 2 years ago, I started to cave in, and so I said, you know what? I think I do want to try and get my bluefin, my bucket list
Oh, yeah.
bluefin, you know. And as I told you before, I think I put it on my Facebook that what was it? Only about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I got on a charter with Jimmy Lou.
Oh,
he invited
Master Lou.
He invited me to go fishing with
Yeah,
him for
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
bluefin.
yeah.
I said, sure, I'm going to be fishing with the best.
Absolutely.
And, you know, with a good charter, we only had 9 guys on board.
Yeah.
And I was super rusty. After, 40 years, I haven't
yeah,
fished
yeah,
in
yeah,
LA.
yeah.
Super rusty. All the new types of gear, 2-speed reels and all, crazy and stuff. So now I'm a novice. I'm hooked on the bluefin. And so every time I come back now, I'm looking for a boat to get on. But I was trying to get on your boat, Phil, but unfortunately the dates didn't line up. And
We'll get at that time
Yeah.
in the future.
So, are you fishing with Jimmy?
actually, Jimmy is fishing in a couple days, but his charter's booked. And so I couldn't get on with him.
Chet, I have so many. He'll kill me. I have so many Jimmy Lou. He's a legend. Okay. I mean, think about it. Well, you know how tiny he is.
Yeah.
Here's a guy that one of the first 300-pound yellowfin on a single speed, standing up. He's a technician. I've never seen an angler so astute, where he's fished with me every single Sunday with 2 different groups. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know anybody. I would walk into his tackle box was always on the starboard hatch on the Mustang. It was on the corner. And I wouldn't ask. I just go and open it up, and here's a guy every single week, that fishes every week, that had a new tackle or new lure, and he had it in that one corner.
Yeah.
How many guys are like that? Not many. He's very special, Nobody has, he's so astute, technical things, everything that he did. Do you remember he started doing some of the first super glue seminars and he glued his fingers together like this? So every time we see Jerry to this day is, hey, Jimmy! And he goes, cat Dota, because he had that famous catfish stop on the Mustang. I don't know, you've heard about that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's legendary. We had what was it, a quarter or 1/3 of the entire fleet count because of his catfish that we were playing around joking. Stopped the boat and we went into nailed the albacore and we were in it for hours and hours. But we had 1/3 of the entire fleet count thanks to Jimmy Lou. So he's renowned.
He is.
He's an old friend. He's one of the best guys you ever meet. But yeah, right. You know, yeah.
Hanging around
Jim was the
Joe's.
man. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he was. So yeah.
Yeah.
I saw in your last podcast they talked about Gardena Bowl and you wanted to give it a try.
Yeah.
We used to go with Yo for dinner there, right?
Yep.
We used to have dinner and then he'd go back to the shop and work after that. And so, yeah. It's,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Got
Lot
to do
of-
that too.
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
yeah. Been around for a long time.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
You got me so excited. My son is moving to Florida December 15th, Patrick.
oh,
So, I mean, the first phone call I'm going to make on the way home is, we have got to do Cuba.
ah,
You know, we have a guy that can help talk us through it and everything else now.
sure, yeah.
Chet, yeah, my dear friend Chet.
Yeah.
And Danny, I would love to do that. We might even
Oh, my
grab
God.
Steve over at Promar and have him film that. Have
Oh,
a real professional
unbelievable. Yeah.
job on that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Is there any problem filming in Cuba? Does the government frown on that, or are they good with that?
You know, I didn't look into that actually, so I
Yeah.
don't know. But I know you can't fly drones there.
Yeah,
Yeah, drones is a no-no. In almost any country, drones is a no-no.
right.
Yeah, every country. They don't like the drones. Yeah. So, but yeah. It's pretty good life.
Oh my God.
my God.
We've enjoyed this so much.
Well, look at the experience
Yeah.
and the knowledge that, you know, and Chet, you were hesitant about doing that. The people have benefited so much by your experience.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I've loved it.
This is a legendary, you know, I mean, talk about technical things and things, you know, that you should know when you travel and being a trailblazer. Oh my gosh.
I thought it's
A book.
pretty boring.
You wrote
but
the book. No,
Oh, come on. it's
gotta
so
rewrite that
exciting.
book. Yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you a good question. We're moving up on, we're going to have a 3-hour show here.
Holy
Oh.
smoly.
Um,
Thank you for hanging in there, folks.
Do you want to sit here and we'll catch up on some questions with Danny?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to go home? Do you want to, what do you want? You tell me.
Well, they may have questions for him.
That's
I
true.
mean, hey, you once in a
You're stuck
lifetime,
there,
you got
I'll
you
I'll
got
stay.
you got Chet. He's
I'm retired. I'm on
encyclopedia.
vacation.
Come
All
on,
right. We
you
prefer
got
you stay.
you got that
Okay,
opportunity,
thanks.
folks.
because
Go
At
ahead.
the end of the show, I'd love to shake your hand and, you know.
Yeah.
It's been great. All right, so I'm gonna try to do this.
Absolutely, let's
Yeah,
do
get
it.
you
Let's
through
let's go for it.
We were talking about Yellowtail in San Diego. Doug Rubin says the half-day boats got all over them in La Jolla today, Danny. So that is good
Oh,
news.
God.
Steve wants to know: do long-range boats have crew trained to handle health emergencies for a passenger? For example, if someone forgot their medication.
Well, on medication,
Yeah, that's
that could be
different
that's
thing.
a
You gotta
tough
get
thing.
medication at that
Yeah,
point.
that's a tough deal.
But those guys are trained and
Yeah, and then you know the networking between all the boats going in and out too. They might be able to transfer it over to other boats too. You
Yeah.
know. You might be down for a day or so, you know, or more, you know. But it depends how far down you are too, you know.
Steve Bermuda says the world is falling apart. Let's go fishing. Sounds like a good idea. Puck Yu says he's got freezers full of bluefin tuna. He wants to know how can he donate his fish because he doesn't need any more. He's going to come out and fish, but how can he donate them? I'll help him.
Oh
with that.
yeah, you could.
I
We
can help you
could
with
figure that out.
Yeah.
There's, you know, well, you go down and see orphanages and stuff
Yeah.
down in Mexico. I mean, I'm sure they won't deny, you know,
Puck Yu,
deny any of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Puck Yu is this guy's name, so don't think I'm getting nasty here, Chad.
No.
All right, hey, Larry's watching. He says hello from Clearwater, Florida.
Holy
So
smokes!
today we've had people from Montana, from Florida, from Taiwan, from where was the other place somebody was from? I forget. All over the place. This
That's
is great.
unbelievable. That's awesome.
Let's see. Oh, Larry was saying it sucks that we don't read the chat. Larry, we read the chat every single night. We just had a special guest here, my friend. Every night we read the chat. We're reading it right now. Aaron says, yeah, he says they do, but they're in a deep conversation with a special guest. They have a motion sickness bracelet. Google it, says Emmanuel Navedo. You guys have any experience?
It's an acupressure
Does
type.
it work?
It's a point, yeah. I haven't, well, haven't needed it, but I've seen it, yeah.
Same here. Never
Yeah.
get seasick. So.
Now, I do have a funny story. Terry Rando at Arts Tackle one
Yeah.
time. He had an electronic deal, and he goes, "Hey, come see this." I was telling him, "Hey, Gail gets seasick. I'm going to take my wife out. What do you got?" So he puts this thing on me, and you talk about a prankster. So he turns it up all the way, and he buzzes it. My arm is doing this. And I go, "I'm going to kill you." Just turn this thing off, Oh, it was spasming like crazy. But yeah, Terry, Randall.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Okay, I'm reading some of the stuff that we don't need to do. The guy texted me the picture of the striper they caught in Redondo, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, cool.
And Puck You, Dave Clark says you can donate fish to the Warrior Village on PCH near the Marine base. I dropped off about 50 pounds of processed bluefin a few months ago. He said,
There you go.
That's Veterans Village.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
Dan Bates, Halibut Man Mitchell says hello, Dan Bates. Where did you find this guy? They're talking about Chet. He is great.
Wow,
Keep the
absolutely.
stories going. He might have to come back. I agree. Jeremy says, good evening.
Thanks.
Tell Sam I'm still waiting for my free lures. I'll tell him that. Love the chat. Let's see, Hooks Not Lures. Ken Trenholm, what an awesome show tonight. I love traveling vicariously through others. Chet.
Hey, he's the
you've done a
man.
great job, man.
Yeah, one of the trailblazers.
And Jeremy says he's used the bracelet a couple of times with regular Dramamine, and it worked like a charm. We're all caught up here, boys.
Woo,
So,
okay.
I don't know if you want to end the show. Or,
let's.
I mean,
I
Chet,
just want to
what
thank
a-
Chet for coming in. And here he was, hesitant about coming in. Could be one of our greatest. I mean, the information, folks, that you got from, Chet's experience is golden. What can I tell you? I want to thank you, too, Chet. Man, it's just good seeing you.
No, thanks
I
for
miss the old
calling
days.
me. I was
Oh.
surprised to get a call from you.
God, that's awesome.
40 years since you guys have seen each other?
I think that's
Yeah,
right.
well, like I said,
on
we
there.
did a lot of those early travel trips on to Mexico and things like that. But just just the experience, the T-shirt deal. I mean, we had fun.
Is
had
Danny
fun.
still as handsome as you remember? Remember him?
More so.
Or no? Man, he's really
Oh
buying you
my
off.
God! Yeah, you got it. Oh my God!
Well, gentlemen, why don't
Okay.
we go on a trip someday together? Whether
There's a
it's
great idea.
Across the border down to Rosarito or San Quintin or.
Or even a plate lunch in Honolulu one day,
Man,
maybe. Who
so-
knows? Something. Yeah.
Yeah, if you ever come to Hawaii, I'll take you fishing and take you for a plate lunch.
I would love that. A good friend of mine moved over there several years ago, and Joey Gallagher is his name, and they have a place called Gallagher Staging here in Los Angeles. They do the staging for
Oh, okay.
the really big shows, big stuff. But he's also very generous because if you look out here, Chet, there's bags of clothing, and we store all that at the Gallagher Staging warehouse, and then 2 or 3 times a year we ship it all down to Mexico. And we're going to be doing that right before Christmas. on
That's
our next
great.
one.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome. Fun
That's
stuff.
good stuff. Let's see, Daniel Leanos. This is a great show, guys. Thank you. Part 2 with Danny and Chet, Steve says.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do another show.
Oh boy. Yeah, I gotta get in town, huh?
Yeah,
Once in a
yeah,
while.
we'll plan it. We'll plan it. When you get in town, we'll pop it in there.
I can see
That's
people
that's a done deal.
just listening to every
Oh,
second
absolutely.
of this great stuff.
Absolutely.
Cuba, New Zealand, Mexico,
unbelievable.
Costa Rica. Nick Curcione. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to call Nick right on the way home tonight
There
too.
you go.
Yeah.
Story about fly fishing, real quick, if you want.
Yeah, with Nick.
Yeah.
Is it having to do with him?
Well, doesn't have to do with fly fishing so much as when I was in the business, like Danny knows, you get a lot of rods and reels to test out and whatnot. And so, I didn't realize it till my recent visit here that United Composites, right, used to be, what was it called? Something USA.
Well, Graphite USA.
Graphite USA, wanted to get it right. Graphite USA, which started out as mainly fly rods, right? So, and I was doing a lot of fly fishing, so involved with the fly fishing business too. So I got to meet the owner of Graphite USA. His name was Dick Kantner. You probably heard the name. Dick Kantner started, he was an aerospace engineer, and he started it, but he started doing golf club shafts first.
A lot of the rod guys did. Gary
then-
did, Loomis, and those guys all did too. Yeah.
So I still to this day have every rod that he gave me to use of Graphite USA, which turned into, long story short, it's United Composites, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting for me, that started with Dick Kantner.
Yeah.
And then I think he moved to Phoenix, and then Phoenix had moved back to California.
Well, a lot of the golf shafts and stuff were manufactured in Phoenix. That's why a lot of those guys gravitated over there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Because Gary Loomis did the same thing.
Oh.
We started going into golf. We go, oh, please, Gary. But he did, But yeah.
So yeah, I know you can relate to that.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's going to be here in a couple of weeks. We're here.
Oh,
He's
okay.
coming in. I'm dragging him in December. Phil, we got that down,
Oh,
right?
that's great,
yeah.
Danny.
Yeah, but yeah, we've been blessed being around a lot of unbelievable people, phenomenal people.
Yeah, Gary Loomis rods. I used to have some. In fact, I was fishing up in Sacramento, on the Sacramento River, and I took my brother-in-law fishing. Right.
Yeah.
I had a boat up there too, and we're fishing for salmon, and he's on the bow, and Loomis rod, and I forget what kind of reel on there, but they were back in the day. They were $200 rods. Right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was expensive. Somehow he threw it in the river.
Oh, no.
Well, Chet, you're gonna have to tune in when Gary gets here. It's gonna be a roast on both of us, trust me.
Oh yeah.
And but you're gonna be dying. You're gonna be dying laughing. I mean, there's some stuff that we did at shows and things. Yeah, but yeah, he's a clown, and yeah, we all have stories, and that's we might want to make an album, a comedy deal out of that one.
Oh, my God. All righty.
Yeah.
A couple more. Let me read a couple more. Since we're still going, we got a few more minutes here.
Oh my God.
Brian says, this has been an awesome show tonight. Just wish I could have been with those guys back then. But then I think about it, how mean stories have been lost with our brother. How many stories have been lost with our brothers. Albert Ponce, hey guys, sorry for the late tune in. I just made it to Rosarito. He's got a great place in
Oh,
Rosarito.
awesome.
I've stayed with him down
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Couldn't wait to see you guys. Great show as always. Mitchell, halibut man, as a 31-year-old, my motto is always listen to people with gray hair, especially gray fishermen. How about no hair?
Yeah. Come on over here. We'll slap some paint up there,
Yeah,
Phil.
let me tell you, when it grows, it's gray. So there's no doubt about it. What a
Oh,
great
good.
show.
Unbelievable.
Matt Tamayo, amazing show tonight, gentlemen. Yeah, it was.
Well,
Chad.
and thank
Thank
you
you.
guys for tuning in, but Chet especially. Yeah.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, you want to wrap it up, Danny? Go ahead.
Well, listen,
Hit that
folks,
like button, everybody.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and again, the blessing, with Phil and having that opportunity to have Chet in town here. Oh man, unbelievable, unbelievable. Yeah, I could go on forever, but we're gonna let you guys sleep tonight. But thanks for tuning in, folks.